So what I'm gonna do now is the module for complexity and the opportunities within, to provide a little more content to help you with the content that you heard this morning. So let's share screen. Some of you have seen this. We've asked you to read it actually. I don't know how much you understood when you read it because it's a lot of words, but what it was these two trainers were here. They shared in a one-day session with all of us, and then we wrote this up as notes from the content and from the discussion we had with them. So let's go down, just some introduction and the concepts. In the study of policy analysis, they say 50 years ago, they did not use the term complexity. Analysis meant breaking things down into simple things that could be understood and controlled. So you remember the language around command and control from the content earlier this morning. So, you know, how do you have things small enough so that you can command and control? So you think all problems can be solved by command and control. So usually that's the top-down system. We were taught to plan on a 3 to 5 year time horizon, to budget and to problem solve. That was 50 years ago. There was a belief that the power of men to predict and control problems, and we even developed protocols for problem solving. And in fact, the consequence of this approach was mess, the creation of mess. Situations where it was not clear how much of the problem was caused by our attempts to manage it. You see what I'm saying? You actually, the problems were so complex, but you had a linear way of addressing it and you made a bigger mess in trying to manage it. It was even messier in colonial contexts. So it's okay, we wanna see that way of thinking, and we wanna evolve from that. So if you move down, so we're just gonna go through the notes and then we're gonna unpack it a little bit. Move down. So let's stop here. Complexity as a term moves us beyond, yeah? So it's not these things, it's beyond hard, difficult, and complicated. It is not about hard, difficult, and complicated. It's about things we cannot know in all their details. Actually, if you look at the FS ecology, it is all about complexity. We cannot know in all their details. Nothing that we're doing, we can know in all their details. Risk is calculations of likelihood and consequences. Uncertainty took us to things we neither knew in likelihood nor consequence. So we didn't know what is the likelihood of this? What is the consequence of that? Now we talk about unknown unknowns. Not only do you not know it, you don't know it. Understand? Unknown unknowns. That surprise even the experience because they involved novel events with outcomes under unstudied conditions. This is the reality today. Climate change is one such topic, full of unknown unknowns. Do you think we know all the science of climate? No, we don't. Do we think we know what's going to happen to the food system, to forests, etc., to bees and populations when the temperature goes up by one degree? We don't know. We can imagine, we can even put science to it, but the real impacts, we won't know. So the more we recognize complexity, the further we advance along a continuum from control to managing to coping ahead. So realism suggests aim at thriving in complexity. I think FS is one such model of trying to thrive in complexity. Go back up. So look at this very simple table here. Sorry, it's like my notes, but you have control, manage, cope ahead at the top. You have risk, uncertainty, unknown unknowns. In the past, it was control risk. And then now it's more manage uncertainty, cope ahead for uncertainty. And increasingly it's manage unknown unknowns. Cope ahead for unknown unknowns. You guys tracking? It's okay, it'll become clearer as we go down. Okay, next para. The risk control that is demanded by large institutions is not possible. And to try to achieve it drowns you in subject matter specialists, meaning you have a specialist for this, a specialist for this, a specialist for this. You think you can control all risks. You can manage all risks, and then you have, a whole bunch of consultants, and you think that that's going to solve it. So tackling complexity requires drawing on more diverse knowledge and on more management options to achieve what they call the law of requisite variety. Let's not go into that. That's a whole nother module. All this means valuing local knowledge and the experience of groups of people who have performed better under the novel conditions occurring. We can talk more about that. Where is this kind of knowledge? The kind of knowledge, to paraphrase this thinker, James Scott, that can get you into a harbor full of stones rather than establish highly generalizable truth. So what does that mean, get into a harbor full of stones? Meaning the harbor has a lot of coral, a lot of batu, but because you have knowledge, you have local knowledge, you have indigenous wisdom, you have science, you have everything, you can actually navigate and get through the harbor. Yeah. Instead of establish general truths. ABC is the way to solve XYZ. Do you say that? That is for everywhere. Everywhere in the world, we can do that. You can get to any harbor this way, through this standard of certification. You see what I mean? So we'll go through this in more detail after we've done the notes. So this other thinker, Donna Hathaway, all people create knowledge, and all knowledge is situated at a place and partial. Situated explains how knowledge always carries a point of view from the observer, shaped by the age, the gender, the culture, power, etc. Partial refers to the fact that nobody can ever know everything. You can do your PhD on this, and yes, you got your PhD. Yes, you created a thesis of something. It's still partial because you don't know everything. You answered a question about something somewhere with some people. To understand the world and to solve problems, all societies create forms of science. These are characterized by 1, a set of knowledge producing practices. 2, that are intended to provide better accounts of the world. And 3, are generated by a range of experimental and observational techniques. And that is science. Think about any science, whether it's dragonflies or birds or forests. You can go through this list and it applies. Different kinds of science are effective at creating different kinds of knowledge, some more conceptual, some more grounded, some which require mechanisms, while others which emphasize experience. Okay, so let's see the interdependence between conventional and citizen science. Forever Sabah talks a lot about citizen science. We talked a bit about that yesterday. Science created, initiated by a community in a place to answer questions that are important to them, like the PADI project, like HEH and CERT. Yeah, these are all examples of citizen science. Genuine collaboration between, for example, indigenous knowledge, citizen science, can therefore enlarge understanding, especially in the face of complexity. However, power intrudes into these interactions. Collaborations do not expand understanding if the scientist controls the agenda, and they do not transform science if the identities and situated contributions of the non-professional scientists are excluded. This makes sense to you? Those of you doing water quality monitoring, fish ecology with orang kampong, the paddy work that we're doing, the cert work that we're doing, everyone says, betul gak ini? Ada yang orang yang PhD gak buat ini? Or is it just orang kampung? Even if you write it in a journal and it's written by Dr. Casey, for example, or Dr. Ken, and for example, let's say Dr. Casey tumpang glamour orang kampung, takes all their knowledge and writes the paper. Is there some systems change happening there, even though their knowledge is being brought to the world, but the power dynamic was not addressed? Does that make sense? The people who really actually have the knowledge were not at the table. Conventional Western science became unusually arrogant. I would say usually arrogant, because it started as a male pastime of the aristocracy in a part of the world that achieved brief political dominion. The struggle to diversify Western science has been long and hard. The first generation of women had to fight all the time, which eats you up. But now there are enough of us to band together and create for what we want to do as a collective. We made notes from the discussion, yeah? So this is not in a textbook somewhere, although we're creating the textbooks, if you like. Working with complexity and with this more plural understanding of knowledge. Plural means many, not singular, not only one, yeah? So means moving away from defined goals as best or even good practices, and instead focus upon learning, upon adapting to place and changing context. In short, focusing always on better rather than perfect. So notice that we also have been trying to change our language, not so much using good practices, but better practices. Question to ask about any complex system: what am I missing? Crosswalks, it's another language they use in complexity, describe the spaces or language that enables different stakeholders to communicate with each other about what and how they are managing. These stakeholders can include government policy folks, control room engineers, academic, and wider societal interest groups. To create an effective crosswalk, every term and underlying concept will need addressing through a long-term process of relationship and experimentation. This goes a little bit to the R's just now, a couple of the R's, the roles and relationship. Typically, when you do this, you find that the real world ecology is not following the boundaries of your decision-making policy process. And this mismatch is part of the mess. Defining the system is always key, and there is never just one way of looking at it. Okay, I know this is all a lot, but bear with it. So applying all this to Forever Sabah, those of you not in Forever Sabah or not as one of the team members, bear with us. I think you can apply it to whatever you're doing as well. Top-down command and control systems believe that they can correctly design the macro system such that every micro behavior will correctly manifest the goal. Does that make sense? So you think, like we were talking just now, the jurisdiction certification steering committee, you think you have the policy in place and you believe that everything at the micro level, the smallholders, the mid-sized companies, everybody will correctly manifest the goal. Is this happening? No, it's not happening. So yes, it's one thing to have the policy. To manifest it into reality is a whole other reality. Yeah, pantas was the other thing, okay? The microsystem does not do what the macro system tells it to. True? And even if it did, something else would likely happen in consequence, often messy. Meanwhile, knowledge of the micro, valuable as it is, always has the tendency to miss the wider context. So even at the micro level, there's lots of important knowledge, important learnings, but they will miss the big picture. We'll get to all that in a minute. And also fails to scale in a linear fashion. You can't scale what we'll do in one tiny little village, even if it's a powerful, transformative experience. How do you scale that so that the whole Sabah is like that? It's not going to be linear. Yeah. There is always a difficult gap between the better practices and the policies. Okay, let's move on. This is an important graph which we'll unpack in a minute. The effective real role of macro design is to set markets and rules, while micro operations, with its bottom-up ecology, can generate experience and drive feedback. But they still have to connect across the gap, the complexity in the middle. So we'll look at that. The waves there, the complexity in the middle. Don't get lost in the graph. We'll walk through that. My key learning when we had the session is in the sketch, which I'll walk through in a minute. The vertical axis. So let's zoom in to this image. Can you enlarge? Okay. So this vertical axis represents knowledge, yeah? So ranging from experiential to formal science. Okay, so this is knowledge. So let's say traditional knowledge, let's say hybrid citizen science, the things we learned in the Paddy project, etc., is all somewhere in this continuum. Okay, if you go to agricultural school, you learn something here, right? You go to Kampong Tinuhan, you learn something here. And what we're developing, and a lot of our projects are doing this, is somewhere in this continuum. Okay, so now this top horizontal line represents macro design. So I'm talking about policies, master plans. So for example, the jurisdiction certification of Sabah policy is here. Sabah structure plan here. Sabah agricultural blueprint here. Yes, can you name other plans? All of them are up here. And the bottom horizontal, remove the text down, line, this represents the micro operation or behavior. Can you move down a little bit? Yeah. The practices and realities on the ground. Yeah. So are you guys getting this? Master plans, policies, etc., knowledge, and then the experience, and then the micro behavior. So let's call this the Sabah agricultural blueprint. Let's call this Kampong Tinuhan, planting paddy. Okay. They want food on their table. They want food for Sabah. Self-sufficiency levels of paddy go to 60%. What we achieve here, we will move in a just naturally, will always be this kind of move in this direction, where we will develop some better practices. We can even see some patterns. We can recognize some patterns that will become, okay, better practices. They say, we plant when, because the rains are coming when. We use this kind of benih because this has worked well in our situation, etc., etc. And your Sabah agricultural blueprint, one, it may never actually leave the office. It may never actually leave the minister's shelf. It may never get socialized. It will certainly never get institutionalized down further to the district pertanian, etc., etc. Let's just say good best scenario. It goes this way and it reaches maybe to Tuaran district. Some kind of local scenario where they have a copy of the plan. Some people read it, some people didn't read it. Some people know something about it. Most people don't know anything about it, okay? So what's my point? This there's an ocean here that never gets traversed, because these guys, no matter how well they how hard they work, how well intentioned they are, they will not be able to traverse this gap. And these guys, no matter how good this policy was, how much was spent on the consultant who did it, it will finish, it will land here. But then what is in this middle? It's like life, it's people, it's landscapes, right? So moving down, what do we say? The best that top-down macro design can achieve is towards that diagonal line to the right, down towards a local scenario. This is where the top-down manager imagines how their policies and goals will be manifested in the real world. This vision fails to traverse the complexity gap. Meanwhile, the best that the good people in the micro operation, let's say Kampung Tinohan, can get to is that upward diagonal line to the left towards going from their swirling local detail of a few cases to a broader pattern recognition. What is happening across the wider landscape and why? And an ability to name from diverse experience the better practices that matter. These ideas also cannot move beyond the complexity gap because it is always unclear from the micro level what real life policies and systems could best enable and support desired changes at the macro level without creating other kinds of mess. Mess is a key word in this complexity. Okay, last part is my key learning from this module. Wavy line space in the middle is where the juicy complexity is, and therefore that is where Forever Saba does its transformative work. The space between the parallel angle lines is the gap where our work actually lies. We are crosswalk makers. Remember what crosswalk was? Yeah, where stakeholders meet, where all the different ideas and all that meet. Crosswalk is zebra crossing. Atau zebra crossing. Americans call it crosswalk. So we are crosswalk makers, where everyone's different language, different concepts can meet at the crosswalk. So we are in a way kind of like translators, if you like. Okay. Here is where FS is co-developing, growing, and sharing new knowledge that can enable macro design and micro operations to actually connect and find solutions. So as an organization, we manage and cope ahead through a facilitative approach. That's how we are crosswalk makers. Making democracy more direct, more dialogic, and distributed. What does that mean? Right now, our democracy is a representative democracy, meaning you vote your representatives into power and you think they will solve your problems. Has it solved our problems? What does it mean for democracy to be more direct? Meaning we all have democratic rights to speak and to do something and to, basically exercise those rights. What does it mean to say more dialogic? It means we do things like the HHH roundtable. We make it dialogic. We make people come to a table. That was a crosswalk, basically, that roundtable. Everyone comes and everyone speaks, just focus around an issue. That's dialogic and distributed. It isn't just in the adun. It isn't just in the cabinet. It's everywhere. All the rakyat should be democratic and practice direct, dialogic, distributed, while creating mutual learning spaces for diverse participants from both sides of that complexity gap. So the era of controlling risk is over. We now need to manage and cope ahead for uncertainty and unknown unknowns. Think climate change. Let's go back to the graph. Are you guys getting this? Can you see? Think of the smallholder, all palm smallholder here. Think of the JCSC vision. Yeah. Think of your mid-sized company. Think of the JCSC vision. If this never leaves here, if it goes somewhere here, or even goes somewhere here, and our smallholders come up somewhere here, we still have a gap. And think about resources, roles, relationships, rules, results. What can we bring to bear here to connect top down and bottom up? What will a facilitative approach, which was in the last mountaintop, what can it do to help you build those zebra crossings, crosswalks? How will it help you do round tables like we did? Where you surface these things. So you tell people up here, banyak knowledge di sini, a lot of knowledge here, a lot of knowledge here, a lot of knowledge here, which we can bring to bear here. We know there's a lot of knowledge here. They tell us about it all the time. There are 10 million papers that nobody ever reads because it's talking down to us. I'm not saying they didn't do their work there, it's not relevant, but is it accessible? Is it digestible? Does it speak to these people? So what does it mean to be a facilitative leader? What does it mean to have collective leadership? What does it mean to be crosswalk builders? So I know this is a lot actually, but it isn't, because it's things you already know. I'm just kind of putting it all together, putting a bit of language to it. You can look at this and build it on top of what you learned this morning. Why this was useful for us when these two people came to us was help us again build a common understanding. Like, oh, so citizen science is somewhere here. Formal science is up here. We are creating a lot of knowledge. All the findings from the PADI project, all the PES findings, all the Ramsar findings, all the smallholder findings, all the HEH findings. It's all in this part of this vertical line. True or not? Yes? Why am I so going on and on and on about modules and documenting and comms? Because it's creating this, it's populating this, which is not, it's going to help solve the problems. It's going to help a lot of us be able to traverse this gap. And that is for everybody, not just for these to move towards really good policies a lot of the time, important policies, but also help these guys implement. So we're kind of trying to do some housekeeping. Because remember, we talked about messes. Yeah. And recognizing that this is a mess is a start. Recognizing that, say, the sewage system, the land tenure system.
Sometimes people are so stressed out, and the only way they think that would fix this is by jumping or short circuit the system by jumping to the formal side and like become a politician, for example.
Devil spoke about short circuiting. So I'm just wondering what it would look like in reverse, where instead of it being from top to down, or what would it look like from bottom to up? So the citizens in within the micro operations, if they were to go to, for example, the local scenario, what sort of complexities would they experience? And
Good question. Um, I think that that is one of the things in the Forever Saba. Um, I want to say toolkit, but uh, in our approaches, that is certainly one thing. So like the renewable energy work we're doing, and yesterday we were navigating some problems. It was there in the DOs and the ADOs. We went up to the top to tell them about this policy that we want to build, which is the rural electrification roadmap. Um, and we want the state to adopt this roadmap. Then we went to the right agencies. We created a committee. We brought in all the DOs and ADOs of all the unelectrified areas in Sabah. We were able to talk to them. They were excited. They said, awesome, if you can bring electricity to all our unelectrified kampongs. So we were there, and yesterday we encountered some issues because of kampong politics, one. Um, so perhaps some of the things happening in this area before you get from here to there, they have their own political and power dynamics, kan? Because because basically this is a divide, right? This is a divide. The top wants to stay top, the down, are all trying to get access to resources, to power, because they don't have it. So there's all kinds of feeding frenzies and whatever else happening here. So I think what the point you're making, and I'm like trying to answer, is um, the reality between here and then trying to traverse to here. And actually what we are going to do in this roadmap process is build the body of knowledge here, to hopefully address the issue. So what is this in this particular topic? What does that look like? It looks like 400, 500 unelectrified villages in Sabah. Because at the top level, they say there's the policy to electrify everybody. There's the funds to electrify everybody. But why did that not reach the whole micro reality? And of course, what Ibu Dini talked about yesterday, corruption, is key. It's key there. It's also very key here. True or not? What was the second thing she said? Oh, man-made natural disasters. And then the third thing was radicalization. Adakah radicalization sini? I think we have our version of that too. Betul kah?
Another way of answering your very interesting question is to take the example of PES. I don't know whether Ivyana is on the line here, but it's a very interesting example of those communities that we've been working with, very, very knowledgeable about their situation and fully engaged. But if you say to them, okay, design the PES policy, design the water fund, design what the legal mechanism should be for getting the consumers to pay, they will step back and say, this is the other side of the ocean. We haven't been that side of the ocean. We don't understand how to do it.
Yeah. For example, yeah, that's a good example, Ken. Yana, you'll see this in this picture here. Think of the macro design, which was the PAS policy. Sabah State actually has passed the PAS policy, but it's just a few words on a piece of paper. Then it'll stay there forever. No one will do anything about it. But the one thing they did do is they said, let's do a pilot in Babagon. Let's ask Forever Sabah to do it. And We did. So
their
here,
idea came to here and got stuck. It was only because of the process that you did.
well, I don't know if we've even got to there. I would say, I would challenge that it didn't even get that far, because the policy was passed. But no, if you ask all civil service, do you know what is PS say? Or do you know what is PS? I would say 99.9% would say I don't know. But our pilot was here. We did traverse all the way till here. We have built knowledge, and I think we've built enough to begin to traverse this. But we having to work at the top again because of change of leadership. So we have to go back to the NRO, to DID, because leadership has changed. They said, you don't know this thing, but it's called PS. The government mandated this. We did this, and then represent again, because they at the ending of the last phase to the last government, we presented and it was endorsed, but it will have to be reintroduced to this new government. So that's the other thing we have to work with.
Yeah, tiba-tiba I was thinking of the indirect impact once of that critical mass and they terus begini influence the government to do it, because now they say, okay, we'll support and then we'll give a mandate, we pass in the cabinet, you go do it. We're not going to do it, you go do it. So I was thinking of how an indirect impact would empower government to also do it, to also take proactive steps. To have PAS enacted and to be operational. The feeling is like they will support, but they will expect macam the civil society or the NGOs to do it.
But would you want them to do it? Do you think they'll call a consultant from Australia or from the US? I mean, do you want them to do it? Or do we want those of us who will work with communities in participatory processes and dialogues and all that to build something with a more collaborative process and bring something to the table, which is what we did. You see what I mean? So it's not, I mean, that we go back to the whole idea of the quadruple helix, right? Why do you need an institution that goes across the sectors? Because every sector can bring value added in a different realm. There are a lot of things that government can do, and there are many things it can't do, and there are a lot of civil society can do and that it can't do. That makes sense, which is why the importance of all the sectors.
This is a very good graphic to explain where PES is currently. We have some guests in today that doesn't really know about PES. I think they need to know first what is PES, right? Okay. So PES is about we are paying people that is doing environmental services. For example, the community will take water sample in their river, and then the cost of doing that water sampling will need to be paid by the people in KK, because the people in KK are using the water. So that's really one of the basic things about PES lah. So what's complex about this is right now we are literally in the middle. If we look at the graphic, and I think what's interesting right now in the project, the reason why we are able to achieve the formal and the experiential, I would say successfully, even though it's complex, because all of these people, both macro and micro, everybody except that everybody doesn't know about PS, and that this process is a continuous learning journey. I think that's one of the biggest reason why we are able to achieve what we want to achieve for the last 3 years, because everybody understand that the formal people upstairs on the macro design are still trying to learn, and the micro also are learning together. So for those who have joined in the PES meetings would know that all of these stakeholders are like, they are also learning, and then it's a really complex process. Yeah, I think my key point here is that for the system to change, everybody must recognize first that it's a learning process, and that the formal has a lot of to learn from the micro, and the micro has a lot to learn from the formal. Yeah.
Thanks, Yana. Okay, that's good. We're like unpacking, applying the concepts to, our practical work. Anyone else wants to have a go? Or just share something that's in your mind. Remember, this is all developing knowledge.
I just want to echo on what has been said and try to mirror it into the JCSC, like what Cynthia said just now. In my view, the thing about the JCSC is this. Forever Sabah have done the job. So this is doing well, okay? But the thing about the palm oil industry is that there are two other certification, that is the RSPO and also the MSPO certification, in the sense that the messy part is over here. The line is not straight. Sometimes the line is, you think that we are going ahead with the Sabah government, and then when we go back to RSPO, it's back to this side. It's zigzagging. That's the messy part. So this gap, for the JCAC, again, in doing the policy, in my opinion, the gap that we can solution that we can use is that let this be the principle and use the procedure from the ground and adopt that into the JCSC. So in order to reduce the gap. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's also why I was very busy on the last meeting, Andrew and Rebecca, because the knowledge that the JOG is coming up with in RSPO, it's also up there. So it's a lot. We can write entire books up there. But is it ever going to change reality or practices on the ground? Will it stop smallholders deforesting? Will it start FPIC for everybody? No, exactly. That's why I kept going on about, please pay attention also on the practical work that has been done, because the work has been going on. I mean, for 5 years, we've been banging our heads on the wall over here. And now we really, really need the support of the Secretariat to help to traverse this. You understand? In fact, the Secretariat is somewhere there. So you are taking knowledge from all the work on the ground, and then looking at the framework at the top and trying to bridge it. That is the Secretariat's job, actually. We have to have the crosswalk. We have to have the zebra crossing and the language where we can talk with each other, and we can meet there and cross over together. So that's the point I was trying to make, even though maybe I was so frustrated that it didn't come through. But so this is why I think having this lens, you guys can check yourself as well. Where are we? Are we being trapped up here because we're trying to talk to NRO and try to convince them, which you do have to do. That is, but I think what I found compelling and why three governments have endorsed this and we didn't lose the initiative is because of the strength of the work on the ground. When they saw that 80% of smallholders don't have land rights and live below poverty, all these things, that is what they said, okay, we have to do this. Will this help address that? Say, yeah. Are you confident? Yes. Which we are. We believe that's the way to go. We're not lying about that. But we can't do it alone. You see what I mean? But that has what inspired them to keep on endorsing it. So their hearts are in the right place, I believe. Industry is another matter. Are their hearts in the right place? Their hearts are in their banks, I think.
And of course, at that time she was frustrated with it. But so today kan hujan kan, so you bring the rain, kan? Sudah kan?
Okay, anyone else up in the ether or here? You want to just test out your thinking about something?
I just
Remember, go ahead.
I feel that because you see, one of the toughest agency, well, this is from my experience, is the fisheries. But when I think about why they are being tough, it's because of their experience when they engage the micro operation. They have tried really hard to do the tagal, to make sure tagal is being practiced all across Sabah, but they have bad experiences connecting with villages during the early stages, trying to do that. So maybe that's also the case for a lot of other stakeholders. If they are being tough because they have bad experiences, and then eventually in our case, we manage to get the fisheries on board because, like you said last Cynthia, when they see strong work on the ground, they are confident to put their trust. I think when the representative from the fishery that came every time at the platform, at the government platform, at the NRO platform, it keeps on changing. So when we finally did to visit the director and then let him see on what's actually the work on ground and how strong the communities are to actually be ready to accept the Tagal MOU and so on. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, and then he was like, okay, the reason why we are being tough, and then because we have a back experience like this and so on, and we're like, okay. So maybe for my other colleagues, they hang in there and just maybe try to be more understanding on the other stakeholder and try to understand more, like why are they acting like this, why they're being tough. Maybe there are just some bad experiences. Yeah, that's just suddenly just came up to me, like looking at this graphic.
Thank you, Anna. Very helpful. So I think the other thing about knowledge in this area here in the middle of the vertical line is a lot of you now, because of your work, have the knowledge. A lot of you do. As long as you're on the ground, you're working, you're listening, you're seeing what the patterns are, you already have knowledge. Why is it important to document things? Why is it important in certain reports to say what are key findings? It's because we are developing new knowledge. And a lot of institutions are not going to the ground, or it's control and command, right? Even the CCF to the district forest officer to all the guys on the ground. It's command and control. So poaching, illegal deforestation, all these things, the real facts of what is happening are very seldom going up. And why do people do that? Is it to pay hospital bills? Is it what? All these things. There is not much knowledge or information going up to the right places. You remember one of our experiences when we had a workshop and then we wrote the notes verbatim. We sent the notes to the DFO who was present. They bilang, you cannot say that in the notes because if my boss sees that, I'll be fired. And I'll never talk to you anymore. I will not work with you because we said in the notes that there is poaching and hunting. And, huh? Yeah, because the orang kampung would just, oh yeah, it happens all the time. Da, da, da. So we just put it in the notes. And then they got upset because they say, you're revealing something that's supposed to just stay in the ground. But then we say, but it did happen. We can't take it out of the notes. They bilang, nanti, I don't want to work with you anymore. I can't trust you. So we had to find a way how to not change the notes. Still tell the truth, but not lose our ally. Does that make sense? And that goes back to relationships. So the 5 hours, right? And what is our role in facilitating those relationships? Rebecca, you wanted to say something?
So I just trying to make sense of everything, to be on the same page of what you said, what he said. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, and then I changed the graph a bit to draw it here. So the straight one is the time, right? The up and down is what he said. And what you want us to do is to meet in the middle, to combine, to, how to say, close the gap, right? So yeah, I just want to clarify this. This is, we are on the same page that this is what we are doing. Yeah.
I think that what you're doing is innovating and creating knowledge, your own, so this is what we have to do. And it is in here somewhere. Does that make sense? And it is not wrong because we are trying to unpick the mess, right? So as long as we can, you use the word making sense. One of the new terms they use a lot in climate change is sense making. We all have to become sense makers. And we do co-sense making, meaning we do that together. The way of leadership, that's why I wanted to bring it up with Bjorn. The top down, the boss knows everything. The boss is the smartest. The boss knows all the answers. This is gone long time ago. And we're in a reality today where we need to be co-sense makers. And that's part of what the mountaintop is. And that's why we call it conversations. We don't want to call it an expert program. There are no experts. They're just people with experience, different experience. So what you're coming up with, you are trying to make sense for the system that you're trying to change.
Just want to add, we will never cross the line. We will only minimize. Yeah, we will be minimized. We will never cross. It's a messy. Yeah.
I think as long as you can see each other like this, maybe that's quite good. Maybe you don't have to kiss. Anybody online?
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm very new to Forever Sabah, and every time I'm with your group, I'm just in awe, and I'm sort of lost at the intensity of everything and what have you. But a thought did come up to my mind. Have you ever looked at how you've been doing what you've been doing and how effective that method has been? because especially now, when we're moving to this post or COVID and potentially post-COVID era, do you ever think of doing it slightly differently? It's just like recently I met with Datuk Sri Master Liking. He was quite an influential man, I think, in his time. It's Dara Liking's father. He wasn't, I don't think he went to politics so much, but he shared with us a lot of information about how Kadazan society came about, and how he was so detailed in his history, knowledge of history and what have you. And I just felt it was such a shame that nothing has been written about what he's done. And I said to him, you should talk to youth. You should meet with them maybe once a month. He's on wheelchair, and he's obviously quite frail, but at the same time, you can tell he's really excited about to tell his story. But I was just thinking, that made me think, anything that's documented on paper is only as good as somebody finding that information and reading that information. Now that we are in sort of virtual sort of world, I wonder if what you're doing, you could put it out more virtually as well, so that somehow, somewhere, some people will understand what you're doing in all the different areas. And then who knows, rather than you just depend on your own group of people having to think of ideas or think of who you can reach out to, you might get other people coming to you instead. So that's all I'm sort of really thinking about, whether you every now and then look at your method and to see how effective it is.
You mean effective it is in getting it out there?
Yeah, to at least make people be aware of it. I mean, look at the thing about the girl who didn't have any you know, that girl whose story became viral because she didn't have any Wi-Fi or something, and she went up a hill, went on a tree or something, and that got a lot of publicity, and she got a lot of help, kind of thing. Something like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be a full-blown information online, but just something like some kind of teaser of everything that you guys are doing in all the different areas. That way, somebody realized, oh, there is this problem. Like when I went to see you guys, then I knew there was all this problem about land, you know, to do with kelapa sawit, you know, palm oil and that sort of thing. So just, you know, even for me, but admittedly, I'm not a very, I don't read news very much. I'm terrible and this sort of thing, but it's just knowing little things, and it makes me realize, wow, there's that problem, there's this problem. So I don't know if maybe you put out more of those things, little information about that, then people realize who's doing what, who's trying to do what. You might get people who want to help you, you see, from somewhere. Yeah, that's all really.
I think we've been so busy, you know, with all these realities here down here, with the micro operations and moving things up and trying to, you know, be at the table at the top there, that getting the word out to Sabahans hasn't really been prioritized. We know that it's important because the other thing now Ashoka is big on is the mindset shift, that you can do all this way, but if the thinking is still the same, you're always going to come up to that wall, balik. So, and the way for the mindset shift is for the HHH roundtable the other day, you know, what kind of conversation we had, the quality of conversation. You can only have it by convening the space, right? So the mindset shift is very, very vital. We have been toying with the idea of FS radio, like a whole bunch of things, but literally there's not enough time in the day. This is why we have FSI, because we're trying to train armies of more and more young Sabahans and, you know, more experienced Sabahans. And then we can, you know, we can move our systems approach into framework or mindset change, which is, you know, something we are moving towards, particularly why we have these FSI sessions and why we invite, you know, firstly, we're working on our teams, on that our teams have the language, our teams have the vocabulary, our teams have the tools. Sometimes they don't want them, but, you know, we hope that more and more we can build our own capacity, you know, then to be able to share it.
Do you ever think that you would go approach primary schools? Because to do that mindset shift, that is really difficult, because I think the main problem is by the time you approach this thing, or the people talk about that, it's already, you know, it's usually people in their 20s already that you're talking to. And worse still, if you're trying to change civil servants who are in their 40s or 50s, you know, trying to talk to the pengara or the pengurus besar or what have you, SUT. Yeah, that's really difficult already. I mean, rather than approach the problem at the point of where the problem is there, we have to go obviously long term, to start even at school, primary school, because you need to plant the seed there. I mean, you can of course do what you're doing now, but then I think maybe we have to have a whole team to start doing things at school. And that's the only way, or one of the most effective way, I think we can do mind shift. In fact, that's the one thing that I will fight for, to do, to make sure craft is in the school curriculum for primary children.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah. Anyone wants to chime in here or online?
Tiba-tiba, I just wondered, you know, what if, you know, things like the HHH roundtable has a public viewing, and yeah, and you know, not just that, but many other things lah, so that slowly can get more attention of people and maybe attracting, you know, more media and more people talking about it. It's true lah, what Jennifer just said. We terlampau sibuk wah with other things.
It's not the end. We're gonna talk more tomorrow, where we connect the dots between the systems thinking and complexity. We can shift to the last part of the day where we prepare for tomorrow. Yeah, the applying the systems thinking to the FS ecology. Basically, it's going to be group work. Yeah. You had a bunch of exercises today. I know we rushed through everything because it was just practice. But what if you were given more time to do some of those exercises and go deeper into them as groups? So we were thinking of particular ones. It doesn't have to be all of them, but I want to get your feedback as to which ones you really thought were good and you wanna dive deeper in. The ones that I saw was interesting was the 5 R's, resources, apa sudah, roles, relationships. Why don't we let one of our facilitators do it, Ken? Can one of you do it? Roles, responsibilities, sorry, relationships, resource, rules, results.
Yeah.
Okay, did you guys like that exercise? Would you like to dive deeper into that and look at either FS ecology, the whole FS ecology, or particular projects? Let's just write that. The other one I thought was interesting was the direct impact and indirect impact. If you want to look at either specific projects in FS, so direct, indirect impact, and then the other one was the collective leadership. I agree that collective leadership is important to talk about. I think some particularly newer ones in the team don't know that this is actually the way we do run. I I am not in every single project as the leader of the project, as a manager of the project. Every project has either technical coordinator or project coordinator. You know, like Phoebe, I may have done certain things with you guys at the beginning, but as soon as you have a work plan, then I step back. And Phoebe leads with all of your support because you're different experts in the team. And actually that's the way for every project. It is not just that one, but I think sometimes people come into the organization and they think the boss will lead everything in a top-down way. And then there's confusion when that doesn't happen. So that's the reason why I would like to have this as one of the discussions and the exercises, because I want everyone to have a common understanding about this. Because when you're clearer that FS runs this way, you will be less confused.
I like the different levels of impact. The 4 levels, which is the direct impact, the scale, the system, and then the mindset, because it's quite nice to check whatever project we're doing right now to see which level already we're in. And then because you might think, why is nothing happening? We've done this, we've done that, but maybe you're still on the scale impact, not the, because obviously the ultimate one is to have the mindset impact. So it's the 4 levels of impact.
So we put 4 levels of impact, we put it there. Okay, so there's 4 already here. So we choose which one we want to do. Maybe you want to do all 4 of them, or we want to do 3 of them. But we all start with 1, then we share. Then we all do the second one, then we share. All do the third one, and then we share. Does that make sense? So you sharing, you're listening to each other about different people punya experiences. That's one way. That would give you about 40 minutes per exercise if you do 3. So you have 20 minutes to do it, 20 minutes to share. That's 1 hour, that's 2 hours of your day tomorrow. But that's doing 3. If you want to do a 4th one, which is the 4 levels of impact, can also, that's 2 hours, 2 hours, 40 minutes. You have time for 4.